Hey everyone, this is Chef Steven Gonzalez. We're doing another segment out of our Get Your Grub On from my very own cookbook. Today, we're gonna do a simple red wine demi-glace sauce. This is the perfect sauce to go over a steak. We have all of our ingredients right here. We're gonna keep it really simple for you all. So, to make things simple, we've got a little bit of some shallots, some garlic, a little bit of some mushrooms. I also like to have some herbs, fresh and dried. We've got a little bit of some red wine, some broth, a little sugar. Now, one of these ingredients is a little bit of our demi-glace already made for us. As you can see, it's just a little bit, so we're gonna add to this. Now, there's a lot of different ways to make an awesome demi-glace sauce, but this is cooking kind of made simple for everyone. All right, so let's get this started today. We're gonna start off by getting a little bit of some grapeseed oil into our pan. Now, you don't need a whole lot because we're gonna saute everything down. I like to do a medium heat. You can do a really high heat, a really low heat, but to me, medium is just the best way to go because it's consistent. So with all this being said, we're gonna get a little bit of our shallots and we're just gonna pop those in there. And we're gonna let that kind of cook down for just a moment. Now, we're also gonna add a little bit of our garlic as well. My only tip is to be very careful with the garlic, as if you burn it, it'll start to get a little bit bitter. So we don't want that to happen. So that's one of the other reasons why I have it on a medium heat. Again, I like to be able to control everything that we do. So we're just gonna let that kind of cook down just a little bit. You can let it go about 3 to 5 minutes until it starts to get nice and soft. One of the other ingredients that I'm a big fan of is mushrooms. Now that's gonna give it a little bit of an earthiness flavor to our sauce. So now that we've had our shallots and garlic cooking down for just a sec, we're also gonna add a little bit of some mushrooms to this pan. So here we go. Now when it comes to cooking mushrooms, it's gonna soak up all the grease or all the fat that's in the pan. So you're gonna wanna watch that. So in this case, as you could see, there's really no oil that's left in there because it got all soaked up by our vegetables. We're gonna add just a little bit more. And you know what, this would be a good time. We can crank up our pan just a little bit. Now, when it comes to making a sauce like this, you always wanna be in control of the heat. You wanna keep a constant eye on it, so that way you don't forget about it, and not to mention you don't burn anything. So, here we go. We're just gonna let that all kind of cook down for a little bit. This would also be a good little point where if you wanted to add a little bit of some seasoning, some salt, some pepper, that's also a good way to go. Now, one of my favorite seasoning concoctions, salt, pepper, a little bit of some onion powder, some garlic powder. That's what we have here. We're just gonna let that continue to cook down as well. So, let's say you don't have a whole lot of time, then in that case, you can crank it up, but again, you totally want to watch what you're doing. We're starting to get a little bit of some color in our pan. Our mushrooms are still a little bit on the light side. So what I'm going to do is we're going to let that kind of cook down for just a moment. The reason being is because as we caramelize our mushrooms, they're going to naturally get a little bit earthier. The flavor is going to come out and it's going to be so much better. So here we go. This is another reason why we also want to cut our mushrooms really thin, so that way they cook a lot faster like that. So, here we go. So as you can see, now with some of our mushrooms, we're starting to get a little bit of that golden color to it, and we're going to let that continue to cook down. Our shallots are starting to look nice, our garlic is starting to look nice, and our mushrooms, all the flavors are just kind of blending together very, very well. So, now that they've had a chance to kind of all cook together, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a little bit of some red wine to our pan. Now, I've learned the hard way not to add too much red wine. You don't need a lot, maybe about a 1/4 cup. I've learned that if you put too much red wine, that's all you're really gonna taste. Even if you cook it down all the way, you're just gonna taste a lot of red wine. So we're gonna add a little bit. And just be careful pour it fast if that's what you're gonna do, so that way it doesn't kind of fall out of the pan, you know? So here we go. We can also start to crank up our heat. As you can see, our red wine's cooking down really nice. Now, if you're making a big batch of this sauce, of course, you're gonna want more vegetables, add a little bit more wine, but nothing wrong with that. So this is where I start to add a little bit. We're gonna add a little bit of some sugar to balance out all the vegetables. You don't need a whole lot unless you like it really sweet. I'm also gonna add our herbs to this. We've got a little bit of some fresh thyme, a little bit of some dried bay leaves, and we're gonna let that all kind of cook together and toast. That way, you're getting all those aromatics coming up towards you. So now that our wine's cooked down, we're gonna lower our heat yet again, and we're gonna add a little bit of some chicken broth, or some chicken and some beef broth. Here we go. We're just gonna let that all kind of cook down. Now what I like about this sauce is when you add our little demi-glace pack right here, you're gonna get that nice rich color, and it's gonna thicken up. Now, if you're afraid, you could always add a little bit of some tomato paste. That'll help thicken it up too, but I've learned the hard way that you start to get a little bit too much of that tomato flavor, if you will. Now with this, again, we're just gonna let that all kind of cook down. The gelatin from the beef bones help keep this nice and thick, so that way, as it cooks down, it'll help thicken up your sauce. So as you can see now, we're starting to get that nice thickness to our sauce. The color's looking really, really nice. It gets to a certain point where if you wanna just kind of, that's what I'm looking for. If you wanna strain it, you're more than welcome to. We can definitely strain it. If you wanna leave it whole, you're more than welcome to leave all your mushrooms in there, because of course, if you're putting this over a steak, your mushrooms, your steak, your shallots, your garlic, your fresh thyme, and your bay leaves and all that, it's just a wonderful flavor all together. So we're gonna let that kind of simmer for a little bit, and that's where the thickness will start to come in with all the time that it's just sitting there cooking. Oh, it smells good. Now, if you're in a rush, crank up the heat a little bit. If you have some time, just let it do its thing. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, so now we've had a chance to let our sauce kind of reduce down. This is the consistency we're talking about. Now, as you can see up close, we got that nice coating of our spoon with our sauce. It's a little bit thicker. So this is where my favorite part comes in. We're gonna lower the heat a little bit. We're gonna add a couple knobs of butter, and we're just gonna let that kind of all cook down. So what I like to do is butter's very, very easy to break. So I'm just gonna take it off the heat, and we're just gonna swirl this around in our pan until it's nice and smooth. Now, what I like about this is that it's gonna look nice and creamy. If you put a really cold butter into a really hot sauce, it's gonna cook, it's gonna separate, and it's gonna look real greasy. Now, as we're swirling around, as you can see now, we're starting to get that nice creaminess with our pan, with our sauce. It's just looking nice and smooth, velvety. So here we go. Now you got that nice, creamy, delicious, demi-glace consistency. Fantastic. Now for the last step, our sauce is done. As you can see, we have that nice coat over the back of our spoon and in our spoon. We just so happen to have a steak right here. How awesome is that? So, you know what? We're gonna get a little bit of this sauce. We're gonna drizzle it around our plate. And you know what? Normally I'd say let's strain this, but I happen to really like some mushrooms. So we're gonna throw some mushrooms, a little bit of the shallots, the garlic, all over our steak. I don't know about you, but I like a lot of sauce, so we're gonna get that all over our steak. And now, for the moment you all have been waiting for, let's try it. Now, I know y'all are thinking at home, wow, you know, I wish I was there to try the steak, and I kind of wish y'all were here too, but let's see what it all tastes like. Let's see. Rich, delicious. That steak is awesome. Oh, wow. So, I hope you all learned a thing or two. Make sure that you go to Chef Steven Gonzalez or Amazon.com to get your very own copy of Chef Steven Gonzalez. Get your grub on. Let's cook. Let's keep it simple. Let's have fun in the kitchen. And more importantly, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button somewhere on the screen around here. So yeah, have a great day.